Hello, welcome to Active Baking. My name is Alex and in this video I'll be showing you how to make my spiced pumpkin and meringue roulade. Hello, I'll be showing you how to make my spiced pumpkin and meringue roulade. This consists of a homemade spiced pumpkin jam, mascarpone and a meringue. You then roll this up to make the roulade and then top it off with some spiced pumpkin seeds on top. It's absolutely delicious and you can follow along in this video. To make the meringue for the roulade, what you first need to do is make sure that you've got all the equipment and ingredients ready. It's quite simple and easy to make. So equipment, you're going to need an electric whisk. This could be a hand whisk or a tabletop whisk, whatever you have access to. I wouldn't recommend hand mixing it because it does take quite a long time, so you might have a very tired arm. You'll also need a large mixing bowl, a baking tray, and you want one with like lips on the end, so a nice ridge. This is so when you put the meringue on it, if you have a baking sheet for instance which is completely flat, it might spread out and won't keep its shape, and you really want to make sure that it keeps this shape just as you would with a Swiss roll, so that when you roll it up it has the same equal length. You'll also need scissors and baking paper. Ingredients wise, my meringue's only going to use 3. You're going to need eggs, caster sugar and corn flour. You will need 5 egg whites. If you're using only large eggs, then I'd recommend using 4 egg whites instead, but if you're using small to medium, then definitely 5. You'll need 200 grams of caster sugar and 1 tablespoon of corn flour, so I've got my tablespoon measurement there. The first step in making the meringue is to separate the egg whites from the egg yolks. So firstly I have my 5 eggs and I'm going to crack each of these individually and then put the egg white into the bowl. Now I know that looks a bit gross, but we have our 5 egg whites there, and I know it doesn't look like a lot, but once you've whisked it up a lot, got a lot of air in there, then that'll be plenty. So now I've got those there, I'm going to prepare my baking tray. And this is where you're going to need your scissors and your baking paper. And the first step is to preheat your oven. So you want to preheat this to 170 degrees Celsius if you're using a conventional oven. So the first step is to get your egg yolks and your whisk. And we're now going to whisk up this meringue. It does take quite a while, so you need a steady arm and a bit of patience, but it can take between 5 to 10 minutes really to get it to the consistency you'll want it to be. And this is the description you'll see in a lot of recipes is that it has stiff peaks. So when you lift small parts of the mixture up, it holds its form. It doesn't then go back down. And it's not runny, it's quite firm. One of the tests that will really tell you whether a meringue is ready or the egg white is ready is that you'll be able to tip the bowl upside down and there'll be no movement in the mixture. It'll be completely stiff. So I just want to stop and show you. This is what will happen to your egg white. It'll get a lot of air in, it'll go very bubbly and frothy. But as you can see, there's a lot of movement in it. It's still very runny. This is not ready. You do need to keep going until it is firm. And I promise you, it will get firm eventually. So just have some patience. Just want to stop and show you again, this is the next stage. So you will see that it's starting to get a little bit thicker and you can actually move the mixture a little bit up. However, it still has a wobble. Don't know if you can see. And when you pick it up, it's not very firm, it's a bit gloopy. So you can see that the mixture, when I shake it, it doesn't move at all. In fact, I can put the bowl completely upside down and there is no movement from it. This is the stage that you want to be at when you start adding your sugar. With the sugar as well, you need to be adding this gradually. So we have our 200 grams of caster sugar. So we'll just add a little bit in at a time and gradually mix it in. Once we've made sure that all the sugar is very well mixed in, we can then use the meringue, pull it up and see whether those peaks hold their shape, which I don't know if you just saw, that definitely did. And do the test. Excellent, no movement and holds its shape. What we're going to do first is mix in the corn flour. As mentioned at the start of the video, you will only need 1 tablespoon. Next, we have our baking tray and also the meringue. So it holds itself, as you can see. There's barely any movement in it, even if you shake it. And that's exactly what we want. We want it to be able to hold its own shape. And the next phase is to scoop it into your tray. Now we have our meringue in its tray up to all the edges. What we're going to do now is put it in the oven. So my oven is preheated now to 170 degrees Celsius. And this is how to make my pumpkin jam. With this, I'll just be focusing on how much I got out of this particular pumpkin. So I'll weigh that and tell you what the measurements are for each of the ingredients that I've got there. For each of my recipes, I'll put the actual amount that you'll need for that particular recipe. So keep an eye out on the screen. I'm just gonna scrape in the pumpkin that I've just scooped out of my pumpkin. And I've got about 226 grams there. What I'm gonna do next then is just finely chop this up. The amounts that you're going to need. So, firstly, jam sugar, and you'll need about 200 grams of that for the amount of pumpkin that we have. We have caster sugar, and you'll need about 100 grams for 230 grams of pumpkin. We then have the 3 spices. So I have mixed spice, ginger, and cinnamon. Cinnamon, here for this amount of pumpkin, you will need half a teaspoon. Exactly the same with ginger, half a teaspoon. With the mixed spice, I like this a little bit more. I feel like it's got a really nice warm flavour to it and very autumny and Christmassy actually. So I've got 1 teaspoon. As we have our pumpkin really nice and fine now, what we can do is start to heat it up and cook it a little bit. So you will need a pan for this bit. What I'm going to do is scrape the pumpkin in. So you won't need much water, just enough to cover the pumpkin. And then we're going to put it on a low simmer. As the pumpkin comes to a nice simmer, just leave it for about 10 minutes, just for the bigger chunks in there to soften and absorb the water. I think that's about done. So the next step is to drain the pumpkin and then pop it back in the pan. Now that I have drained the pumpkin, you can see it's still quite moist. There's a little bit of water that's remained there, but that's all good. The next step is to add both the sugars. So we have our jam sugar and also our caster sugar. Add them both and we're going to heat up the mixture just on a low heat for now. When the mixture starts to simmer properly, this is when I get out a timer. And I'd recommend around 5 to 10 minutes, stirring every couple of minutes, just to leave it to simmer. But as it has a minute left, what I'm going to do is add the spices. So we've got the ginger, we've got the mixed spice, and we have cinnamon. And we're just gonna stir these in. So now that it's had its final 30 seconds, we're going to turn the heat off and simply take it off the heat. To make the toasted pumpkin seeds, you will need the following equipment and ingredients. So ingredients wise, you will need half a cup of pumpkin seeds that have been rinsed and dried. You will need cinnamon. You will need sugar. So this could be granulated or caster sugar, whatever you prefer. You will also need salt and vegetable oil. To make it as well, to make sure that you can cook it, you'll need grease-proof baking paper, a baking sheet, some scissors to cut the paper. You'll also need a bowl and a spoon for mixing. The first step is just to prepare the baking sheet. You can then take your bowl and your spoon. So empty your half a cup of pumpkin seeds. So we're now just going to mix this up together until it's nice and thoroughly combined. You'll then need to put it on the baking sheet. Okay, so I'm just going to spread those out. What's really important when cooking these as well is that you turn them over occasionally. So that could be halfway through, or maybe every 10 minutes, just to make sure that both sides cook well. And now once those are done, you will then need to put them in the oven for 45 minutes. Now that we have created all the different parts for the roulade, we can now start putting it together. So we have our meringue, mascarpone, pumpkin jam, our toasted pumpkin seeds for decorating. To prepare it, what you need to do firstly is just make sure that there is nothing sticking around the edges. So just go around with a knife. To do this, have your meringue in its tray and get another roll of baking paper and make sure that it covers the whole side, and then you're going to place it on top. You could use a baking sheet, for instance, and just put that on top, hold the paper and flip it. And then once you've done that, you can slowly remove the tray. Then you can remove the layer of baking paper that's on there. Make sure you take it off nice and slowly because it will be ever so slightly sticky. The first thing that we're going to put on is our jam. Now the next step is to apply your mascarpone. At this point, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a nice plate nearby. Put it on, because you're going to have to put it on pretty quickly. And this is the fiddly bit where you have to be quite careful. We're going to start on this end and just pull it up ever so slightly using the paper. Try not to use your hands, as then you'll only be, pressure points will only be on certain parts of the meringue, and that could lead to it cracking quite early, which is what we want to avoid. So here we're just going to use the paper. You can fold it down if that helps. As you can see as well, a lot of the filling is actually coming out. So what we're going to do is get our palette knife number 4 and just scrape away the excess. And then hold it over so it's down and put gentle pressure. And now we need to move it onto our plate. There we have our knot. You can use this video to help you make the roulade. I have also linked my recipe in the description below for you to use. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more recipes like this in the future, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Active Baking, and this is where I post more things that I'm baking, some of my recipes, and also little teasers of what's to come. Thank you again for watching my video. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.